Hi, so we are here today at the Clemente with...
Natalia de Campos.
And Thiago, Szmrecsanyi.
How long have you guys been at the Clemente?
How long?
I think Thiago has been longer than me, so I've been here since 2001.
Yeah, it's a very, very long story, like since 1994.
Nice, so over almost 30 years.
Yes.
Yeah. But what would you say was your initial purpose at the Clemente Center when you first came in? Just a broad idea.
Oh, purpose? It was like we needed studio space, right? Like that was like the first thing, but like then, like after like with the years and everything that we created it here inside, like we can say that like the proposals changed according to the times or like something like that.
Yeah, I would say I came also because I had specific projects and I had to work in a particular space. And then that's how I met Thiago. We started also collaborating in a number of projects. But specifically, I wanted to be more part of the community of the East Village. That's actually the East Village and the Lower East Side are what attracted me to move to New York in the first place. So it was like continuing to be more into the neighborhood and doing work, and I had shows coming up. At the time I was working more in performance, so I started to morph more my work as I started to work and collaborate with Thiago as well, but other people that have also worked in this building and in different places of the neighborhood.
We try to explain things, your relation to the community. I think the first thing that come to my mind is like the needs, right? Like for instance, when we enter the building here, we have like a lot of space, but very limited resources, right? So just transforming physically the building was like for instance, these walls that are here behind us, like they were like all half walls that we converted into like closing the studio spaces, and we had like people from the community. It was like it benefited them because it was like a way of like providing money to the community, and we could transform our space with like the resources or the very little that we had at the time, right? And so like when you think about needs, you can go a step further, because indeed we don't live in a vacuum, right? Like it's not that we are here artists in a building, in an art building, and then we are suddenly going to move to interact with the community that is around us, right? Everything happens at the same time in the same place, right? So we had like, for instance, the people that worked with the construction here, and we have like helping the artist community somehow. And we also have like a broader political problems in the city of New York, right? Like with the political change, and like the rent started rising, and there were like people that were displaced, and we were like, as a community of artists, at risk of being displaced too by the city, because Giuliani wanted to auction this building, right? So then we really had to come together to find supporters in the whole neighborhood, and then try to stay and start fighting a little bit to stay in this place.
And one interesting thing about that, I think, is that people started to find different ways to interact with community too. Like, for example, doing festivals in a park and being part of that, or working with a local gallery in the market, and think how can people know more about the building and the artists here, like what's happening here? Because some people just would pass by and not know what's happening inside. Yes. But then we started to do that more as a group, saying like we need to make sure that people know that both you who do this work or that work are part of this community.
Yeah, or to call attention to the center here, saying look at the work that we are doing, and like we need your support.
Yeah. If you want to go ahead and like give just like a quick timeline of from the start of the pop-up at the Essex markets to now, I guess, what is the program with the AI and the UAU, and how that has evolved.
Actually, we had another artist that helped create the gallery was interacting with us to engage the community and the market into the gallery space that was very intimidating for most of the market vendors. So we invited them to bring their ideas of art to the gallery.
So this gallery was like Cuchifritos, right? Like that was like in the early 2000s, like because we were talking like from like the 80s to now. The gallery was created like in a place that was like it was like a storage area that they had at the market. And we converted this closet space into a gallery, and it was like we started like the first show. It was the time that like the digital photography was becoming popular, and we gave like cameras to all the merchants to somehow like bring what like their vision of the market, or their vision of like an artistic thing.
So just to say, the result of that show was that we displayed, the community that kept the gallery displayed the photos that they took, the market vendors took.
Yeah.
And so it was different views from the space.
Yeah.
Then, within a certain period, they were still not feeling at home to come into the gallery,
Yeah.
or to feel that it was their space too, even though it was inside the market.
Yeah.
So then Local, which is this other show, started when we started to invite them to bring their idea of art into the gallery.
Yeah, and that was like some sort of, it followed the format of like a little residency at the market, because we had to stay there talking with each merchant there. Oh, could you bring something that you believe is artistic?
Yeah, and
like,
I would say that a common thread of our work, and with this, became also clear that, from that first project to today, we always have this element of activating the people that we're collaborating with, whether they're like passerbys or like a community that is set in a specific space, like the market vendors.
Yeah.
That the way we activate the community or communicate and let their ideas also seep into ours, not just have our idea of like what art is and how we want to make things, but listen to them and see like how they can interact. So it was very interesting. The results were but that was one way of activating, I think, the community and getting more integrated. And then later people recognized us and they would say, hi, in the market, and so on.
Yeah.
But then that evolved into these projects that you're seeing.
Yeah, artists as a whole, like as a group, like we don't exist in a vacuum. We are interacting with our community, and our presence here somehow changes the neighborhood, right? Like they interact with like people from different social levels, right? And that kind of like thing. And also we are not like US, if art can be related to the gentrification, I believe so. Like for instance, the artists turn the neighborhood becomes more attractive for like other audiences, right? Like to come here, and then maybe like that can create an effect that if it's more people are willing to come here and live here, the rents are going up, right? But at the same time, most of the artists, we don't make like a lot of money, right? So we can also be like some of like a displaced population, like for instance, later on, like we were like driven.
We don't necessarily intend to be the drivers of that gentrification, but it ends up inevitably happening.
Right.
And I think if a lot of artists could go back, we would maybe think about what we did or not do in a certain neighborhood differently. To think, how can we still do that? How can we still bring people to see the work? How can we still interact with the community, but not be agents of something that is going to negatively affect eventually ourselves, but also the community at large. I would like to actually then fast forward to what we did in 2021 with the city gave a lot of grants outside of coming out of the pandemic, right, to artists from all over all neighborhoods. That was called City Artists Corps grant that we both applied, and we would be able to do a project in a certain community with a public outcome. So we both decided to do it in front of the old Essex, because now the old Essex market is in ruins, is abandoned to give place to new real estate developments, and it moved to the south side of Delancey. Yeah. But when we projected the project, we said like we want to go back to that old market, outside of it, because it was totally closed, shut down. We did the projects on the sidewalk, because we said like now the community needs us. Like the community was really hurting after the pandemic. What can we do? How could we activate this process of giving back, but also trying to revitalize the area? And then Thiago did one project called We Fix It, and then he would talk about it. And I did one that's called Poetic Reader, which is like readings, custom readings of poems, one-on-one on earphones, where people would at least come out of that.
When they opened the new market, for instance, there were like some vendors that didn't move from one market to the other. Like there were like, for instance, the people in the 90s, for instance, we had like people that would fix electronic equipment, right? Like some, or even like garments. There were like 4 stools of like people that were there just to fix things that were broken. These things completely disappeared by the year like 2000 and something.
Professions that sort of disappeared.
And then like there was also like that had like a lot of history, right? Like I was sort of like, since we are reopening now, I'm missing like some of the things that are like closed or closing or permanently closed. So it was like sort of like a shout of like protest, but my interaction was like I was asking people, like I would be right in front of the closet, and I would be there like with this little stool that was performed. This was the same, this cart was the same as like we used this in in the collective bargain using that sign. Then I transformed, like I had like that thing that is over in the back was like a counter like that I would receive, and I had some needles. I had this poster in the back like with showing tools that were not there, but like that I would put right in front of like the posters that were attached. And then I would be there like waiting for people to come and say, oh, what do my question to people were like, what do we need to fix? I fix things, but what do you think we should fix, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about this project as a sort of like a circle, right? That we started like trying to activate a community that not necessarily wanted to be, to then maybe a community that needed to be. And needed, by saying needed, includes us. Like we needed to see the community come back, you know, from the pandemic, and like the people feel that they could just sit. In my case, it was like sit with me and rest for like between 3 and 5 minutes. That they could come to him and interact. But in between, there were all these other projects, right, that you asked about, and we mentioned that would be questioning the role of art itself, right? Like the commerce. So Art and Com is one of the projects that we were thinking about. What is the com? Is it the commerce? Is it the community? Is it the communication? Is it the commodification of art?
Let me give you like some like the contextual information, right? Like so, the Art and Com we started like we created. It was like a project that we made specifically like for the Jamaica Center for the Arts. So the concept was like we would give like all the merchants our business cards and say, oh, you know, like we as artists, we are going to do a project here, and we have something in common that like we both like take a lot of like care about our images, about our product, and then we would start asking them questions about who consider your displays, or like do you have a business card, and we started collecting things from that. And I was asking for their whatever they disposed to or whenever they rotated the display, so that I could build an exhibition based on that.
Based on the discarded material.
That was like the concept for our work.
And later there was like this box which represented them all and had like also information about them. So it was like a kind of like thinking about how they would benefit also from getting some being part of like archive.
And we had like some people coming from Brazil visiting the show, and they got interested, and like they asked us like can you create a project that is similar like for our gallery, you know,
in the Lower East Side,
and then
which is then what became the relocation, that we brought those ideas, what we developed with the community, back to our community, but at the same time to a gallery, temporary gallery from a Brazilian gallery.
No, but later on, the same gallery asked us also to participate in an like international art fair in São Paulo, Brazil. It was so like that product from the like Jamaica Queens was like in an art fair.
Then it became a secondary exhibition, or I would say tertiary, because it was the third time in São Paulo, in a space in a very wealthy neighborhood, which was I think was the time where we were really putting the ideas to test, because first we were doing within the community, then we brought outside of the community to a similar community but that had different issues. Then when we took it to Brazil, we were taking it to a very different neighborhood, where the questioning that we were doing within the exhibition about the political forces that sort of did the gentrification, the coup against our democratic elected president, and the ideas of commerce, right, the there, it was a very, like think about Fifth Avenue in New York. It was like this very commercial neighborhood next door to the exhibition. So both the commerce, the commodification was at odds with our exhibition, and also the people that sort of helped enact those political coups were there too. And it's also that it was similar to, so in 2016-17, with the Art in Odd Places, with Art and Com, with the Collective Bargain Project, and the birth of the United Artists and Activists Union, all was happening here, right? With the election of Trump, with the rights being taken away from workers and so on. And then right after, it was happening in Brazil. So it was like kind of rewind and play back in a different context, different way that affects people in different ways as well. All of these got reflected, I think, and the reason why we decided to found on the street the United Artists and Activists Union, because they're like, we don't have rights as artists, we don't have rights as activists, so whatever we do is never well recognized. How do we discuss these ideas with people if we don't even have like a place of authority, let's say, with anyone?
political activism became like something that was predominant because it was needed. It wasn't like something that was like that was exactly what we wanted to do, but we were like forced to react to things all the time, right?
The thing about that is that it's just like the market and the work that we did with activating the community. It started to seep into our work and back into the street. So back to the people who we interacted with, but they also very much influenced our work. And now with the political activism too, like it seeps right back into our work, and then we give it, we hope at least to give it back, right,
Yeah.
to the community, but also like in the political landscape, like how can we affect change? And he's a programmer, video artist, and he is developing our other, because we had a fourth person in the WOW who had to move back to Brazil, and she became less involved. So we said we need a new comrade in WOW. So Tracy started to develop this bot, which is the Roger, our AI companion, comrade. And Roger is a very interesting concept on how we start to inevitably integrate AI into our work, when we might think of ourselves as low-tech artists. We are not the programmers, Tracy is, but Tracy brings this other element to the collaboration. And he also is evolving as we go. Like Roger, our AI comrade, started back in 2017. Actually, even before 2016, we did a big installation here in the studio with a number of activists interacting. And the first signs of Roger started to show up in the projection on this wall. Tracy was developing the ideas of how he could source data and turn it into bubbles or like visual elements.
Yeah, so first, like Roger or the robot was an ear, right? And he would
And
listen everything that like would like be spoken here in this room, like in the meeting of like activists. And there was like and he would translate that into a visual communication. So like there would be like a projector there, and all the topics with the words like spoken even it will show up, and depending on how many times that was like repeated, like it would be like a bigger circle, a smaller circle. So visually, like you could see like some sort of like a translation here on the wall of what was discussed here. We had like a long like board meeting table here, like on the floor.
With all the middle.
Yeah.
After that, Roger started to show up more as a kind of a what chat GPT is today, that people can input information and get responses. Later, he kept developing. We did it outdoors as well, where people could input information or input their questions, and Tracy was typing it at the time. Recently, he became a more intelligent artificial
You can
person.
process more information.
Yeah, the things that I discussed with Roger in a recent performance was the role of AI in our world. Like it can be helpful, it can be a comrade of your union, and it can be giving you important information, talk about your rights, which is one input that Roger currently has, is that we talk about what are our workers' rights, and then he comes and brings up all these kinds of information. But I'm like, what are our rights really when AI is taking over? And more recently even, what is our role, even with AI taking over, being our comrade, when AI is being used to target people in a war or in a genocide?
Even like, because like on the left side, people always complain about the algorithms, right? Like, okay, like our species disappears because of the algorithms are set in a certain way that our opinions always come last, or like they are not, we are being silenced by it. And the way like Tracy created like this robot, he's defined as a progressive like a robot, right? Like, so probably there is a way that he filters information that he gets from the internet.
He's programmed.
That it somehow favors our own views. But
which is interesting because it also has the digital, right? The fingerprints of Tracy. So it's still a human behind it. He's programming Roger in a certain way, but also sometimes we can't predict. He will have erratic behavior. And this to say that I think we will continue to use recycled materials, but I think now we're recycling all other types of materials too, like information. There's so much information. There's so much out there, like images, and Roger can source that really quickly and do whatever they want.
And do you guys want to give some like concrete ideas of what's coming next, some new, I know you sort of mentioned already a few, but if you just want to like re-mention them, their location, the events, exhibitions, whatever you guys want to go ahead and give us.
So I think
so I'm participating in an exhibition on voting rights that will be called Uncommitted, and it's going to be in a gallery in Bay Ridge, Stand 4 Gallery, and opens on June 15th, and it runs through the end of the summer, or August 10th. There's going to be 3 different artists participating and interacting with the community, or having some works are more the community interacts with them. In my case, I will be interacting. Thiago is going to also support me in building something for the show, but it's going to also have an element where I bring the community in to do a project, and then the result of what they do on the idea of civic rights, voting rights. Also, I think in my take is also our social responsibility in this election year, and social responsibility also beyond what we think, not just what affects us here in the United States, but also what affects everyone around the world. Is born right here. So I think it's something that I'm going to ask the community to think about those issues and respond.
Yeah. My next project is called Reimagining Artist Spaces, and we discussed this building, we discussed our existence here in the Lower East Side, and maybe I'm now discussing the existence of artists in New York, and even in all these minority artists that contributed to Nueva Luz, right? So I'm trying to see what is in looking at 30 years of their artwork, but things that attracted my attention and things that attracted the attention of my partner Regin Lewis. Based on our findings, we are creating about 6 big topics, and we are departing from photography. We are going to be doing processing images, getting the topics and processing use more sketches, drawings, silk screen, and that's going to be together with some sort of a timeline of our choices our selection, reference cards from the collection, and that is going to be open in probably, I have to deliver everything in early, the deadline is the end of July, right? So the exhibition probably opens in August, and then they are going to publish another issue of the magazine, and there is going to be something, some digital presence, right?
It's an exhibition, a magazine, and a digital.
Yeah, they have different
publication.
formats. So
Nice.
that's it.
Wonderful. I think we can end it here for the interview part. Thank you both so
Thank
much.
you.
It was so
Thank you.
nice.